Hello all engineers, makers, friends of electronics out there. A warm welcome from our studio in Aachen. This is Matthias Clausen from the Elektor Lab.
With me Jens Nickel, our editor-in-chief. So we are back, almost in time, some delays, but finally we managed that.
Yes, we announced the show originally for last Thursday, but Matthias was ill and we have the same show, an even better show today. Yeah, Matthias, you have something to say?
Yes,
I think.
First we need to crank up the volume.
Yeah.
So down in the audio settings, we are currently at -9 dB slider. Come on. So
we make it a little bit louder.
Yeah, so we will see how that will work out.
For the aged people like me.
Yep. Oh, no sound or volume is quite pretty low. So that's kind of weird. Maybe we need to crank that even a little bit more up. We did a test run.
Okay.
Yep. Maybe change the settings. We did a test run a few hours ago, and
that's how it goes. We are live, so
yeah, I think audio is still a thing. May crank that. Do you have this dB and crank that further up? Plus, I think we should go +3 should be a lot better. Do we have now sound, chat? Okay.
Test. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we are not as loud as it should be, but we are doing our best at that point. So, first things first. At least better as the live stream from the embedded we did. I think the audio at that point was quite way off, to be honest. Yeah, better but still quiet. So, yeah. Still not loud enough. That's weird. That's really weird. We have the full opposite. Give it +6. Can use the. So close, or maybe we have other issues that there's something else hopping around and messing with the mic at the moment. I mean, we have it. I mean, it's kind of a
We have the time, Matthias. No problem.
Yeah. I mean, we will have short in a few minutes also a live call with Teams, and that messed up the audio in the test setup.
Maybe.
So we will see how that goes. For today's show, we have a sponsor for that one.
That's cool.
Yeah, actually, Scenelist main was sponsor. So this, yeah. So today's show, as you can see, is sponsored by Krengel, which is running a series of regional masterclasses during the summer period, with subjects like diverse as iSIM, eSIM implementations, low-power modules, and wireless IoT device applications. We are sure you will find the ideal masterclass to help you with your IoT design. If you are interested, in the description you'll find a link to the masterclasses of Krengel. And if you have missed that, we visited the Krengel booth at the Embedded Show and did also an interview about the actual and upcoming products. So if you like that, after the show, feel free to go to the Elektor TV channel and may go to the Elektor TV videos that we did at the Embedded Show. With that said, we have some things more to announce. First, we did last stream the edition 3.14. I wish I could bring some Pi. A giveaway of 2 Raspberry Pi 02W with headers, so these little ones. And we have winners. So, for that one, this is the YouTube username Drablos and TW Retro. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Our logistics team will get in contact with you to ask where we should send these to. If you don't hear anything from you within 4 weeks, they will go to another good place. So that's it. At that point, also, so we put that back in the background so that you can see that they are not going away. And also we have winners for the Raspberry Pi Pico. So Malcolm Swart.
Yeah,
Garrick.
now I'm curious how you pronounce it.
This is Garrick Yace, Manuel Kauf, Kurel Leis,
Something
Nijo,
like that.
Ivan. So
Congrats.
congrats. You will also be notified with YouTube and get a message. Somebody will ask you where we should ship them. Please reply for that message within 4 weeks. If you don't, we will assume you don't have interest, and those will get to another good place as well. That said, winners for the last show, and we will also give away this show something else, maybe not as special, but at least kind of as rare as the 0W, 5 Raspberry Pi Pico W. So we are giving away.
What's the W?
That's for wireless.
Yes.
So
And we come back to this at the end of the show.
yes, Sidecam. So, so what they did, a Raspberry Pi Pico RP2040, and they added a Wi-Fi module to it. They only use 3 pins of the RP2040, so a lot of I/O pins are still available, and they are targeting that for $6 without taxes, so it will be roughly 10 euros. Currently, they are not in stock. There are delays in the schedule, so, but they are announced to arrive in our warehouse on mid of August. So the first 5 that are arriving are reserved for our winners. So we will give them away during this show, and stay on the stream to know how to may get those.
Yeah, let's switch to ourselves. You are always a winner if you are a Elektor member, because you get always the latest edition directly to your home. And if you aren't a member yet, then you can of course become one, or you just buy this new edition in our warehouse. So yeah, its focus is for this July edition, test and measurement. Yeah, you can see we have a lot about test and measurement. The cover story is about audio testing. And you know, normally an audio tester is very, very expensive. We have one in the lab, a very good one, but we are talking about thousands of euros for such a good device. And even if you want to buy a second-hand one, you pay several hundreds of euros. But there are cheaper options. There are very good USB-based sound cards on the market, and there are affordable, if not to say cheap, PC tools where you really can make a lot of audio measurements, a lot of different audio measurements, and you can build your own audio lab at home with affordable amount of money. And Alfred Rosenkrantz is our test and measurement specialist. He knows a lot about this. He is experienced for decades in that field, and he writes a nice cover story about this. And of course we have a lot of projects as you are used. We have inductivity tester, we have measurement tool which can measure the frequency of the net which is also interesting to find out what the current situation is. And Matthias, yeah, you also did a nice story about smart plugs.
Yes, a small teardown of those, because it's quite interesting to see what's inside of those and how they are built and how build quality is.
And what did you discover?
If you know one, you know all. There are some
very similar
from the base idea. So, how to say it, you got a kind of Wi-Fi MCU inside, you got a relay, and you got some kind of power supply. And also there are some interesting tricks they did. And also the kind of fuse they use, or the overcurrent protection they use, is really interesting. So some are fixable, some are, if the fuse blows, well, it's gone for good. So quite nice to see what they have done at that point. So nice read, and might also be interesting if you would like to modify those with your own firmware, how to get started.
Okay, so watch out for our new edition. Of course, we are currently working already on the next editions, and we currently finished already the next edition, which is a very special one. It's
I need definitely a wireless mouse.
It's a summer edition, and I think the older readers will know our famous semiconductor editions we had some years ago. And yeah, this year we have this summer edition full of projects. Again, you can see here a brief look on our table of contents. And you can see we hardly got all the project names in this two-page spread. We have more than 50 projects. It's about audio, it's about ADCs for microcontrollers. We have small amplifiers. We have of course very simple circuits with LEDs. We have a candle simulator, which is very, very simple. So you can really build and solder a lot, have a lot of fun, and I think this edition will be again very, very popular. So watch out at the newsstand sales, and maybe in the next lab talk we can really dive a little bit better, dive a little bit deeper in that edition. We can show you some of the articles. Yeah, that is the next edition. And yeah, coming directly to the November-December edition, because we are already working on that edition also. We are always some months in front, of course. That's the work of editors. And we will have an interesting, very interesting cover story, Matthias. It will be an amplifier again from our lab.
Yes, it has been a long time since we did an audio amplifier, and as those ones were very popular, so we thought, hey, let's get to those again, because the last one is 10 years old now, 10 or 12 years.
And these are indeed very popular. From time to time I get mails, can you answer me questions about amplifiers from the 80s? So readers are still willing to build them. They are sort of timeless. And yeah, for this amplifier we have a colleague in the lab who knows everything about amplifiers. And yeah, I think before we talk a lot of things, we directly switch to him.
As he can't be on site, we will...
Yeah, but we are modern, we have the infrastructure, so we give him a call.
And let's see how that goes. So for a short moment, let's switch to... Yes. Hi.
Hi, Ton. So that's Ton Giesberts. He's our audio expert in the lab since, I think, many years. Ton, when did you start at Elektor?
Yes, I can hear you, but I have a... I started in 1987, so that's quite a while ago.
You did a lot of audio projects in the meantime?
I started specifically as an audio or analog designer. I never had an interest in programming.
With the current audio amplifier you built, I mean, were there any? What's so special about it? I think it's not the usual Class D stage we are used to. From the pictures I can see it's a lot.
Sorry, there's a time lag in my audio, so it is really weird. I get my answer like a minute later.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we had a good test run, so this is what's expected to happen.
Yeah.
The audio amplifier you have, that's not a Class D, I think. I think that's more Class RB design, so high.
This is really, again, really analog design. No Class D, really Class AB. With a twist, it has a symmetrical bootstrap at the output stage, so that it can deliver 2 volts more than a classic AB design. It's all explained in the article. I hope that is enough for now to mention.
Yeah, and you did some trickery with the input stages of that amplifier.
With what? I didn't quite get it.
I said you did with the input stage of the amplifier, you have done some tricks to get even better audio results.
Oh, the design is pretty much based on a design from 1990. It was called the Power Amp, I think, in those days, 1990, end of the year. It was really valued. It was published also in the magazine Audio, German magazine, and they really liked the design.
It's a famous German testing magazine for audio equipment, and we were actually in there.
I don't know if you can show the schematic from Labs, maybe. I don't know if you have the PDF. Maybe it's easier to talk about the design if people see the schematic. Because of the bootstrap, it needs regulated plus minus 40 volt power supply. There are specifically designed switch mode power supplies for audio. So there's a difference between a classical DC power supply that delivers, let's say, 400 watts. That means if you have a 40 volt output, it can deliver 10 ampere continuously. With the audio power supply, it only needs for a short while to deliver peak currents. So if you have a power supply that is rated 400 watts, it may deliver twice or 3 times the current than it's rated for, if you know what I mean. If you have a 40 volt output, it may deliver like 3 ampere or 4 ampere RMS, but it can deliver like 10 ampere or 12 ampere peak currents for audio. It's not designed by us, but there is a specific design that's called an SMPS 800RE. People can look it up if they want, and there are more designs like that. So I'm not advising to use a standard transformer, bridge rectifier, and large alcos, large capacitors. I would say, really, if you want to use this amplifier, make sure you have a regulated ±40 volt.
What will be, okay, Ton, what will be the cost roughly if you let the PCB etched by a PCB service plus the components? What do you think for one channel?
Just the components, I think you should be able to get them at, let's say, 150 euros. And the biggest costs are probably the heatsink and the power transistors. And there are high temperature electrolytic capacitors for decoupling the power supply. These are also not really cheap. But I think for the quality, it's still a cheap design and easy to build, I think. The whole mechanical work is just drilling 12 holes in the heatsink. The heatsink has fins that have enough space so the head of an M3 screw can fit between them. So you don't need to tap like an M3 thread in the heatsink. You just need to drill a hole through the heatsink, and you can mount 6 standoffs with M3 screws. You can mount the transistors just with screws through the heatsink. So that should be easy. And that's all the mechanical stuff you have to do. The rest is just putting the components on the PCB.
Do you have the prototype there? Can you show us the heatsink?
Yes, I can. I hope I can show you the fins have really a lot of space between them. So that if you look at the back, I think you can see the screws and the room for error. Should you shift to the left a little or to the right a little? The only difficult part is placing the transistors first without soldering them. So you first put the PCB on the heatsink with the standoffs, so they should be centered. And then you have to bend the legs of the transistors, put them underneath the PCB, and then mark the spots where the holes for the transistor should be. That's the only difficult part on the mechanical stuff. It's all explained in the text, so I think most people shouldn't have a problem with it. That's MPS, so switch mode power supply, SMPS 800RE. If you Google it, you should get I shall have a look if I can find the shop. Yes, connexelectronic.com.
Would this be maybe a good Elektor project for one of the next editions?
Switch mode power supply is not easy to design. It's easy to make something that can deliver like 1,000 watts. That's not a problem. But making it with a quality so it complies with all regulations, and there are quite a few. That's the tricky part.
Another question from the chat. For the non-audio experts, what would somebody use the amp for? So what's its main purpose besides the amplification, making something louder?
High quality. If you enjoy good quality music, if you have good quality loudspeakers, you also want a good quality amplifier. And I think you won't be. It's a good design. So it's really high end. If you look at the specifications on Labs, I don't know if you can put the link to Labs Okay.
What would you prefer a mono amplifier? So
yeah, that's my it always has been my preference. Don't how you say it, compromise by using one power supply and two amplifiers. There's always an earth loop. You always have problems with channel separations, ripple current or whatever. Always build two mono blocks. Then you have the best quality. And the problem is also to make the quality high end. This the center earth is on the PCB. So you can't place a central earth point at the power supply because on the amplifier itself there's a central earth point for the whole design. So where output, loudspeaker output, the power supply is 0 and the input ground come together. So you can't place that outside of the PCB. That will really degrade performance. So really build a monoblock, one power supply for each channel. And the power supply I mentioned is really not that expensive, I think, for the quality and for the power it can deliver.
Okay, so we will have an eye on the project, and if it hits the Elektor store, if it's almost ready to be shipped to the customers, I think we should talk again about the availability, how to build that.
Yeah, maybe it's a good point to mention that because of the problems with electronic parts, the availability and distributors have really problems getting stuff from the manufacturers. We also have a problem. So we can't really tell now when the kits will be available. We will do our best. But for instance, the heatsink at the moment are not enough on stock at various distributors. And I think there's a lead time of 13 to 17 weeks. I hope we will get it sooner, maybe in lower quantity, maybe not the amount we want. Maybe we can like 50 in the coming months or so.
What is your, Tony, what is your expectation? When do you think the situation will get better?
It's hard to tell. Sometimes, like Vanel, they say, okay, we expect this part to be delivered in week 48. And suddenly you have it 3 weeks later when you expect it only to arrive at the end of the year. So it's really hard to tell. And if you look at some parts, not only Vanel, like Mauser, RS Online, they have a date like the 1st of July 2024. And then you think that's just the date because they don't know when the manufacturer will deliver the part. So it can be sooner, can be later.
Is it reasonable to buy more components to have it in stock?
You mean as a private person?
Yes.
Or you shouldn't need them. Let's say if you have the parts in the kit, that should suffice. I don't expect if you're really careful with it, don't short circuit the output and so on. If you really take care of the amplifier, it really will last a long time. So. And there's always the problem, of course, that if a manufacturer, in this case, the transistors are from ON Semiconductor, they call themselves ON Semi now, I think. There's no replacement. It's a unique for them. You can't replace it with another transistor. It has a diode on board for the quiescent current. So it's really a beautiful transistor, nice specifications. That's why there are 2 in the output to really make it a very linear output stage. But there's no alternative. You can't get another transistor from whatever manufacturer to replace it. You really need this specific transistor. The rest of the parts are pretty standard. The small transistors are BC546, Most people will know them. They exist for like 40 years or so.
Okay, then I would say if we have news on this project and news on the availability, I think we would like then to invite you again to even may talk a little bit more about the project and its hurdles.
Okay.
So, thanks for being at the show.
Many thanks, Don.
Okay, no thanks. See you next time.
Bye.
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 Okay, so.
Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, we come from the analog stuff to the more microcontroller, to the more digital stuff.
Yes,
because we were on an event, a very famous event.
The Embedded World took place, and it was not in February.
No, it was in summer, and it was kind of strange to see the people sitting out there sweating in the sun.
I mean,
from time to time, and at noon, yeah, it was quite hot in Nuremberg.
But
it was daylight. For the first time, I really saw Nuremberg, the old town, in daylight in the evening, and I think the same experience had many of the other people.
I mean, the time frame was really nice. So we had really, I mean, it was a little bit hot, but that's complaining on a high level.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice. Weather was good. And there were many visitors. So it was not like the Produktonica we were, where it was a little bit calm and silent. But this was like, there was really people walking around. It was not as full as the times before Corona, but
from time to time it was crowded. We are usually in the hall with the ST booth, and there you always have crowds because before the pandemic they had a lot of boards too. So there was always big queues of people who wanted boards. This time it was a little bit less with these giveaways.
Yes, so you could get boards. They had some giveaways at some point. There was another company around that has given away, I think, 20,000 of their evaluation boards, which was not ST. And yeah, so the exhibition, the interesting thing was, as from an engineering point, you walked up to the booth and there was somebody you could really talk to. Usually engineers are sometimes maybe a little bit shy or whatsoever. So, but you could enter the booth and you could really have a nice technical talk about products. And also you feel the other side had time and was not in pressure that the next 20 customers were already waiting and wanted to talk to them. So it was a really nice experience from that point, and it was really enjoyable.
Yes, I think the same. I had the same experience, and yeah, I think that was really the boost we needed to get the fairs again running. Everybody said that you saw at nearly every booth very smiling faces, so everybody from every company was quite satisfied. So that's really what we needed, I think. And yeah, of course we also have seen interesting things, and yeah, there were not so many giveaways, but Matthias, you succeeded in get one
or two,
or some.
One or two. So, what was interesting, we got our hands on a generic LoRa node. So the Things industry that belongs to the Things network were there. Also Semtech was around. So LoRa at its best. So we got a little LoRa node to play around with. ST MCU inside, LoRa module, European 868 megahertz. So that's something we want to give a go. So we have some thoughts what we can do with it. So that was a nice thing that showed up on our booth. So yeah, a small talk, and then it was there.
What is inside this box?
There is a temperature and pressure sensor inside. We had a screwdriver kit, but it's currently gone. So
okay.
We will tear that apart later and put images on Twitter. So just look at our Twitter accounts, so you will see what's inside. We will report on that later. We don't want to do advertisement for them. So it was a nice gift that we received, and so we can play a little bit around with that. What we also got in hands, that was something different. That's company name. The what is it?
Can you read it here? SE100.
The SE100, it's WBM. WBM, if I got that right. And microcontroller focused on security. So they have full encryption inside, secure enclave, stuff like that. It's a really, really nice, I think, eval board to play around with that. And
that's obviously an eval board for that module here.
Yep.
And what are these chips?
One is the microcontroller. The second one is an Ethernet chip from Wisnet on the board. And their main focus is on secure connectivity for embedded devices. So you don't need a full Raspberry Pi to get real secure communication, meaning TLS, SSL working up and running. So we will have a go with that. Also,
that's really really nice. That's really a little bit
it makes a sound
robust, and yeah, it's really and you have LEDs here.
Yeah, so that's something we have to look into. And yeah, it does mean you can build secure IoT elements without having a full-fledged Linux inside. So we will give that a go. And one thing we also got, the Raspberry Pi Foundation was at the exhibition, and they were giving away Raspberry Pi Picos. And for the exhibition, usually you have usually there's almost nothing around those things, and you're not allowed to give away giveaways without a box around it. Yeah. So for the exhibition, they did this kind of special run, this little box, where they put the RP2040 inside, and everybody that stepped by the booth or accidentally stumbled near them got one of these. So the RP2040 inside, and yeah, so there were many people that were getting those chips, and these are one of those few that are actually available in bigger quantities.
Okay.
So quite nice for that one. What we also saw, where we don't have an eval board yet, you may know the company Cologne Chip?
Yes. Because I'm from Cologne.
Some of you have may heard of those in terms of ISDN interfaces. So they have in the past done many PBX systems, telephone systems where their IP or their chips were inside, and they are now switching to FPGAs.
Okay.
They, I think, have a quite interesting FPGA at the market, and they can deliver in bigger quantities and also reasonably priced for the size of that. And what they told us and what they are going to do is they will support the open source tool chains. So no vendor lock-in, no proprietary software.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. We will see if one of those eval boards may or may not arrive in the lab.
Yeah, but coming back to Raspberry Pi, we did not just go around, we also worked on the fair.
We did
Matthias.
We did a lot.
We also sweated on the fair.
we did a lot of interviews.
Yeah. On camera.
Yes, on camera. So full motion video. We also interviewed Ivan Apter.
Yes.
And yeah, kind of delays in the schedule. It was a little bit sad because what we should now talk about is the RP2040 or the Pico W with the Wi-Fi module on it. Was released 1 week after the show. So yeah, I think it would have been the greatest to announce that on the embedded world. But sadly, one week between that.
Yeah.
So it would have been another Raspberry Pi that would be announced at the show.
But Eben, despite of that, Eben had interesting things to say, and you asked him interesting questions. And for all the viewers who are interested, you can see all the videos on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/elektorim.
Yes. The interesting things are something from the engineering standpoint, it was interesting. You may notice we did an interview that's still online where Eben said, hey, we are currently using ARM cores for our chips. And the RISC-V ecosystem at that point for the PC architecture, meaning the Raspberry Pi land, not, how to put it nicely, not ready for prime time. But he said at that point already the microcontroller side, so the small embedded side, that's something they have an eye on. They are also a member of the RISC-V. Is it member of the RISC-V Foundation? I think that's correct. And one interesting thing, one of the engineers is actually building a RISC-V CPU core publicly.
Oh, okay.
So you can see that on GitHub, and I'm not sure how far they are, but you can see it will be a dual core version. You can actually download that stuff and try it out. So quite nice what they are doing. So at some point in time, in the future, in the far future, we may be able to see a Raspberry product that has maybe a RISC-V core in it, but
that's probably,
there is a probability because there's somebody that's actually building such things, and as we have seen, they have become a silicon powerhouse, sort of. In that terms of that they can put together their own microcontroller. And so that was quite nice. Also, the way they currently handle the recycling of the Raspberry Pis, or not handling those, was quite interesting. Because the most Pi 4 systems that die, they have usually some small defects in it. But he said, from the full ecological chain, like collecting those, repairing those, fixing those, resetting those, it's currently, sadly, better to give them to a recycling center that will tear all the raw materials apart and build something else out of it. So that's...
Is that a normal development for many companies who formerly used chips from other companies to make their own chips? You can see it also with other companies.
The interesting point of being able to build your own chip, you can do a lot more customization. And what he told is, while they are not announcing a new RP2040 successor, they are still monitoring what the customers give them as feedback. So they know what they should have done and what the customers wished they also should have included in the current RP2040. So they get a lot of feedback, and I think as this is Raspberry Pi, somebody will take notes on that one. So I won't be surprised if, as said, at some point in the far future, somebody would make something out of it. So no new products announced at that point, to make it clear, because there was something in the past that. But speaking of new products, they managed to add Wi-Fi for the Pico.
Yes.
And for the module they used, I think we need to talk about it.
Maybe you can show it in first.
So this is without taxes targeted at $6 per unit. So taxes, Germany, all the stuff around approximately 10 euros, maybe a little bit less. Comes with the RP2040 as usual, 2 megs of flash, and has a Wi-Fi module on the back. And it's originally a Cypress one, now Infineon. And the module that does Wi-Fi, it's quite interesting how they implemented that. They are only using 3 pins of the MCU for the whole communication with the module. And if you look carefully about what part they used and how they used it, so it's not an Wi-Fi module in that sense, so they really put a Wi-Fi chip on the Pico, did the full certification process, so that involves a lot of money, but that's the only way to make that thing in masses cheap. And you can see, besides Wi-Fi, the chip would technically support also Bluetooth.
That's interesting, but
So-
they do not use it.
Not connected.
Not connected.
So that leaves a few questions why.
And then we can dive into the data sheet.
Yes, we can do that. So this is the part, this is the Wi-Fi module you can see. And the CW, if you look that up in the Infineon page, you will get the module, the tech data, and you will see that does Wi-Fi and it does also Bluetooth. Why they have not connected it, it's really a good question. I'm not sure what it is. Speculations from my side, licensing fees, less certification stuff you need to do, and maybe also the ability to use parts that may have not fully compliant Bluetooth parts in it. So you can also, this is highly speculative, but at that point you can also use Bluetooth modules that, you can also use these Wi-Fi Bluetooth combos where the Bluetooth part is not fully working, which can increase the yield rate or the output rate for those modules. So if you have something that's not usable for whatever product else, put it on a cheap system and you have working Wi-Fi, happy customers. Yep. But most likely what I would expect is licensing costs for Bluetooth, for the Bluetooth SIG, for the product itself. So, and the question is also how many users would use Bluetooth on the product, because most users use mainly Wi-Fi in the first place. So, yeah, but still, I mean, not even having those pins somewhere on the board that we could connect to it and misuse it, it's a little bit sad. So just 4 pins, just give us an enable for that. Let us play around with it itself. Let us void the warranty of that. I mean, we're engineers, so it should be fine. Yeah, so, and yeah, the other interesting part is the serial interface you can see. You have here the clock, data, and the chip select. So we are just using 3 I/O pins of the RP2040. Mostly of those are taken from the AD side. So pins here not usually used for high-speed interfaces anyhow on the most modules or on the most evaluation boards of those. This means we have a nice kind of drop-in module that we can use with existing boards. Castellane and it holds again. We have a solderable debug connector, so quite nice for the price. Well, good. It's I think a good product. There's a high interest in it. But coming back to the topic of this show, delays in the schedule, those will arrive, as far as I know, mid of August, at least at our warehouse. And this gives us the opportunity at this point. Yeah, I got from the chat that the Wi-Fi chip is actually more powerful than the RP2040 itself. So there are 2 Cortex-M CPUs inside with a lot more RAM. I think somebody is hitting the mouse or the keyboard than the RP2040 itself. So yeah, quite interesting at that point. So
but that's not so uncommon for eval boards. I remember there are boards where the debug chip was more powerful than the actual chip. So that's
and also for the Wi-Fi part. I mean, if you look at the ESP, the ESP8266 started as a Wi-Fi code chip, where the access to the CPU itself was not given, and later on we got access to the CPU. And the ESP32 was or is built more like, we have a Wi-Fi and we need some sort of microcontroller around it to control it and do stuff with it. And the RP2040 and the Pico W is more like, hey, we have a good, well-known, good understandable, easy to use, dual-core Cortex M0 CPU, and we add Wi-Fi to it. So we have something that can do real-time processing of data and I/O pins, and then we have something that can do Wi-Fi as a secondary step. It's also a quite nice approach for that, I think. And if the foundation keeps the documentation and software support they did for the RP2040, it could be really, really interesting. Yeah, the debug pins are also there. Bluetooth not connected. We don't know what will be in the future, what they are planning, what they are doing, why they haven't it done. So maybe we need to ask why. Yeah, and they have launched another product, and I'm not sure. This is the 0H, a 0 with pre-installed headers. I can see that it can be really beneficial to have those. The castellated holes are gone at the side for cost reasons. What I can see really strange is the way they have done now the debug connector. It's what is this? 1.27 millimeter pitch, 3 connectors, not written on the top what is what. On the downside you have these pads where you can at least solder debug cables on it, but still, yeah, I mean, it's I think €2 more than the RP2040. And to be honest, I would more likely have one of this. Just solder connectors as needed to it. That's it. I mean, this is just.
It's a matter of taste.
Yeah.
Maybe there are people out there who want it with headers, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah. For me, well, I think might be interesting for kids of some sort, but still, yeah, a debug header with at least 3 holes in the PCB, I would have made more sense to it. So yeah, that's the current situation. And now the interesting part. So we have reserved 5 of the Pico W. If you want to have one, right now in the chat, Pico W, you will get a mail or you get a message from within YouTube. The first 5 that write they will want one, get one. And as soon as they arrive, they will be shipped. So, time is running. We will wait a few seconds if somebody is reacting. So, YouTube chat, type in want to have one or Pico W. Number 1 is gone. Second one is gone. Yep.
There's a third one.
Third one is gone. I mean, if we don't get 5 away during the stream, there will be other people that would, I think, like to have one if they arrive.
I would like to have one.
Yeah, go to the chat and write something. Your chance. Yeah, so first we have 2 left.
Then
So-
we keep 2 for us.
Yeah, we can.
Matthias.
Yeah. Oh, another one
we
is
have
gone.
an application for it.
Another one is gone.
Yeah.
So 4 are gone. And I think even for the last one, until the end of the stream, somebody will say I like to have one, I guess.
Matthias, small look to the clock shows us that we already have a XL show. I think it was the longest one.
Yep.
But as I said, we had so many things to report on. Some announcements for the next shows?
Yes, let's do that before time runs out. Or not time runs out, but still.
Yeah, that's the next lab talk. You should definitely watch out for it.
So all 5 are now. First, all 5 Picos are gone. So thanks for the interest in that one. As soon as they will arrive, and that will be mid or end of August, you will be the first to be served from our warehouse.
Yeah, the next one you called short circuit. What does that mean?
We will talk about some of the projects of the summer circuit, which may be interesting. Also, we will talk maybe a little bit about project development and also testing and measurement stuff, or maybe how to get from smoking things to working things. I mean, there is usually the rule, you need 3 iterations to get one working product, and let's see what nice things have happened in the past. What can you do to measure what may be wrong, and so a little chat about that.
And we have other interesting shows to come. That's engineering insights from our colleague Stuart Calling.
That will be a recorded show, so that won't be live. So it will be released on YouTube on that day. So just step by and see when it's done, or just hit the bell button for that. Yeah. Next webinar with our colleague Clemens Valens,
Test and measurement again.
With Arduino, will be presented on Click Meeting. So hit over to the Elektor page and register for that one. So these are the upcoming shows that we have. And for now, if the chat has not any particular special questions, it's time to say goodbye at this point. No questions in the chat. So then have a nice evening. See you at the next show. Have a look at our YouTube channels for all the interviews we did. Some really interesting stuff in it. And with that said, final last word, Jens?
I want to have a free evening now. It was fun. And maybe we get really a console where we can mix the sound externally. That would be maybe an option. Maybe we ask our boss about the money for it.